playing out now based on the CSIR's projections for the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro is suggesting that the ANC and the DA can do nothing without the EFF. How do you navigate that? Let's start with you, Sandile.
The Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, by 2007, the service delivery problems, the basic administration problems were already in manifest. And from that time until today, they've not solved it. So if we're to take the report by Professor Ndletyana as something to go with, it means that short period when Trollip was there was an attempt to recover. There was a progressive, detectable attempt to recover. Then the chaos started and Bobani made a total, whatever you want to call it. Now, the opportunity for the EFF, and one hopes they will recognize it, the EFF has got no place where they can say they've managed anything successfully. Not one single institution in this country they've managed successfully. Unlike Herman Mashaba and the Action SA, who have run a city for 3 years successfully, they don't have that track record. So they can, in their negotiations, to say, we want to be in charge of the mayoral committee for infrastructure and run successful programs, etc., etc., etc. I think that's the type of game they've got to play. As to whether they'll play it, it's another question. But they need to start actually becoming a credible political party that can physically deliver actual services on the ground. And they don't have that track record, and they need it.
Dale, it wasn't that long ago. Julius Malema says, our mission, our job is to get the ANC out of power. That was their job, that was their mission. And by and large, some might say they've succeeded. Would they then get into bed with this party in Nelson Mandela Bay Metro?
Well, I think they're going to have very little choice, because the way in which the EFF has electioneered itself into a corner in the sense of getting in bed with the DA. And to do that would probably cost them a great deal of political capital. So it would be less problematic for them to go to the ANC. But Sandile is absolutely correct. It's calling in some ways, this is calling the EFF's bluff, because the EFF can't have it both ways. They can't say, you see, we're now the kingmakers. If you're going to be a kingmaker, we'll play the role, play it seriously, and step up to the plate. Because otherwise, I think in the next local government elections, the EFF will find itself completely on the outside, because people will blame it for the chaos that will result if they don't want to play a proper, serious game of coalition politics, which is what is going to be necessary, clearly, in Nelson Mandela Bay and increasingly probably in several other metros.
The challenge with partnering with EFF is that it can turn midstream. They can swap loyalties, because they said that they're not loyal to anybody, that they will vote issue by issue. That seems to have been where they've put themselves. Is that sustainable in running a government? Because if you think that if I upset the EFF over a particular issue, we might lose the municipality, that's not sustainable, surely.
I don't know if the EFF is like that. And we think at some point we've got to recognize that the EFF is very blessed with heavy intellectuals who can think. So you must not take everything they say literally. There are some things they say tactically as posturing for negotiations.
Right.
Secondly, the EFF has got actually a very good track record of working with Herman Mashaba in the city of Johannesburg. It was other factors within the DA that caused their coalition to end up coming to an end, in my understanding. So when they commit to something, they are able to pursue it in a responsible way. But there's something else that is a threat to all these coalitions, which is the funding of political parties. It is a threat to a coalition, it is a threat to a non-coalition. Because what is not being discussed honestly in South Africa today is that one of the reasons why people are so energetic trying to win municipal elections is that they want to have access to the tenders and the monies that are associated with those tenders, and then take those monies and fund their political parties and also fund their personal lifestyles. So a lot of what can sound like a strong ideological argument politically is actually something that is simply posturing to get a better access to the funds that are available at the municipality.
All right, and that was a conversation that I actually wanted us to start having. That may be an unintended consequence of no one getting an outright majority and coalition politics being the order of the day, is that corruption may be dealt with, because it should be harder to do it.
Hope survives, as we said, in that case. But I mean, it's in some ways, yes, it could well be the case, but in other ways it could descend the other way. In other words, if we don't have a functioning municipality and governance structure, then it's a free-for-all. People are going to do so. I think in some ways, as I said, getting back to the initial point, is that whether it's the EFF, whether it's the ANC, the DA, and I would say that what we need in this case, I mean, I not disagreeing with what Sandile said in the case of Johannesburg, but I don't think, it's a question of who you're governing effectively for. Herman Mashaba did not govern effectively in Johannesburg for the poor. Actually, he governed effectively for another kind of constituency. So the question is, whether it's the EFF, and this election has shown that it's the poor and the working class that have opted out of the political system and that have caused the most trouble for the political parties. Are the political parties going to be true to some kind of their word, or are they going to continue to play politics with appealing to particular constituencies for particular political points? And I think that's where we are at the moment, and that's a question for all of the political parties to answer.
Let's talk a little bit about the EFF, because they were on this trajectory like this. I mean, they were firing up literally, almost vertically. It looks as if it's leveled a little bit. They're increasing, but not by the huge jumps that they did before. What is that telling us about where they are?
When you look at the CSIR statistics, because they've got what they call special areas, I think they call it special areas, which is the poorer areas, where the ANC and the EFF theoretically are supposed to really fly. But when you look at the overall participation in these current elections from Deep Sloot, Soweto, those areas, there's been a dramatic fall in the turnout figures in those areas. So those people in the urban areas that are poverty-stricken, bearing in mind that Joburg alone has got 1.7 million people who live below the poverty line. And Soweto has experienced a negative economic growth rate for quite some time, negative. So that poverty that is biting on the people, and EFF coming with promises that are not being realizable over a 5-year period. The same with the ANC. So they are now starting to be more or less in the same boat of problems with the ANC. They came up as if they are going to be a new broom that sweeps clean. And I think Mashaba, in many ways with Action SA, is getting more credibility as somebody who can physically do something on the ground.
Yeah, do you want to add to that? Because I'm just wondering if are we now starting to see where they are going to be in terms of politics in South Africa, that they're not going to be a majority party, but probably will always be a significant second or third going forward?
I think so, and I think that was inevitable in the context. I mean, the honeymoon period after 1994, the ANC's liberation credentials, and then the financial crisis. I think in many ways, if you look at South African society and the cleavages, the very deep cleavages racially, economically, and otherwise, it gives rise to that kind of multiplicity of political forces, and we're seeing those come to the surface. And in some ways, that's not necessarily a bad thing. The question is that can those different forces pull together? And to address the big story of this election, we'll go back, is the no vote. That is the largest by far. What's most of those people who didn't vote? Poor people, people who are absolutely desperate, people who do not believe that any of the political parties are speaking to them. If those political parties do not change in some kind of way and speak to the majority, what we're going to increasingly have is an electoral terrain that is run by a minority, and that is a problematic for democracy, irrespective of how many parties are contesting the election.
I'm going to go back to a question that we asked. I think it was, in fact, we'll do that in the next segue. In terms of the system that we have now, it seems as if it's not delivering. Is it the system that needs to change or the politics that needs to change? I'll leave that in your minds to think about, and then we'll unpack it. Because right now, we're going to try and unpack those numbers a little bit now. And I think Pravesh Deva is